2 months from now, the 20th anniversary edition of this book comes out. Like I said, I wrote this book in 1997 when the economy was booming. I wrote warnings inside the book. So lesson 1, don't work for money, because they're just going to print it. Number 2, savers are losers. Number 3, your house is not an asset. And 4 was taxes. Taxes are going to go through the roof, already are. So if you're not smart, then you'll try and save money, you'll try and get out of debt, you'll go back to school to get a higher paying job only to pay more taxes, and you'll be afraid of making mistakes, and you'll be paralyzed. That's not smart. As I said, our education system, your country, my country, is obsolete, behind the times. It was built for the industrial age. Today, we're in the information age. Today, with a cell phone and a MacBook, you can be an entrepreneur throughout the world, but your mindset has to change. The idea of going to school to get a steady paycheck is nuts. It's crazy. It's obsolete. There will always be a few people who have those jobs, but more and more people will lose their jobs from here on. So it's time to start preparing. That's all I want to say. The one thing is, back in 1983, so in this book here, the new book coming out, it will be all the reasons why I wrote this book, because they're true today. They're true today. So there's the 20th anniversary edition. It'll be out in Espanol, and you can read it. You'll track what's happening in the world, so you can see the future. Because the future of the next 20 years will not be like the past 20 years. It'll be more violent, up and down. Okay? So please, if you have a chance, get the 20th anniversary edition of this book. But in 1983, I started studying with a man named, or actually in 1981, I started studying with a man named Dr. R. Buckminster Fuller. He invented the geodesic dome and many other things. But most importantly, he was a futurist. So he taught me to predict the future. And today, I'm showing you the future. You have a choice what you do with it. But this next video is me on CNN. So this is me on CNN with Wolf Blitzer, looking like a complete idiot, making a prediction on the coming crash.
If people start pulling out of the markets in their 50s, in their early 60s, and not having that sort of exposure, we are never going to get to a point where our money lasts as long as we need it to. We need to be participants in this system into our 70s and into our 80s, and then we need a plan for withdrawing those assets, just like we needed a plan for putting those assets in.
Yes, and you're putting those assets into those investment bankers that are in financial trouble today. And all I'm saying is, aren't these guys supposed to be the smartest guys on earth? And shouldn't we be careful who we take financial advice from, including the 4 of us on this panel?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of bad advice.
But Robert, you're really that worried about Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers?
Yes. I'm afraid the Federal Reserve will eventually or come close to bailing them out. That's what I'm concerned about. And that young lady who says the taxpayers are not in trouble, who's going to pay for that bailout again is the taxpayer.
Lehman Brothers says it plans to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection.
The collapse of Lehman Brothers.
Lehman Brothers collapsed.
Hundreds of bailed out banks are still struggling to repay taxpayers.
Way back in 1997, I published this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I said 3 things that got me in a lot of trouble. One was that the rich don't work for money. Number 2, is your house is not an asset. And number 3, savers would be losers. So that was in 1997. And look at what happened in 2007. The real estate market crashed. The government started printing money called quantitative easing, and savers became losers.
It's no secret that the California housing bubble has popped with hardships spread wide. Real estate expert Robert Kiyosaki predicted all of this would happen back in 2005, but most people didn't listen.
It's the biggest financial bubble in the history of the world.
hoping this wasn't inevitable, but we have had a big jump in foreclosure filings. Let me tell you a little about this. There are 650,000 homes in the United States in foreclosure right now.
U.S. foreclosure activity jumped 81% in 2008, with
10 million people lost their homes to foreclosure and were forced out onto the streets.
And to this day, millions of people are still underwater. They own more on their house than their house is worth.
You want to know what real estate's going to do? Look at jobs.
Right.
We still have a bad job situation, so
Right.
it's still a bad real estate situation.
Right. Real estate is only as valuable as there's jobs.
What made you write Conspiracy of the Rich?
It goes back to why don't we have financial education in our schools?
Question: was the financial crisis a creation of a wicked conspiracy? A new online book, Conspiracy of the Rich, The 8 New Rules of Money, exposes what author Robert Kiyosaki says is a twisted tale of how the rich control the world economy through, you name it, the Fed, Wall Street, your schools, and the government that supports these entities. Robert Kiyosaki is the author of the best-selling Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. His first book in the series has held a top spot on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 years running. And he joins us on the program today. Hello, Robert. What is this conspiracy theory? You mean it's a few people at the top handling all of us like puppets on a string? Say it isn't so.
Well, I wish it wasn't so, but I've been a student of this crisis since around 1983, and I could see it coming back in 1983.
People that are following the old rules, such as work hard, save money, get out of debt, live below your means, and invest in a well-diversified portfolio of mutual funds, you're getting wiped out. For those of you who are considering a second chance in the B quadrant or the I quadrant, I'd like to introduce you to my sweetheart, Kim, because the B quadrant and I quadrant is not for everybody. But this is my sweetheart. The smartest decision I've ever made was, getting married to Kim. It's a blessing, almost 30 years now. Right?
30 years.
And when I met Kim, she was an employee in an advertising agency. But I was most impressed was you were going for the B quadrant.
Yes.
And you had a little network marketing business.
Yeah, I knew very early on I did not want to be an employee. I didn't really know what the options were because I was always around employees growing up. But I got introduced to network marketing while I was working in advertising. And I thought this would be a good idea for me to start to learn what it is to be a business owner. So I got set up with this network marketing company. I was representative, and it was a great, great, great learning experience for me into what it takes to be an entrepreneur, because if I didn't make the sale, I didn't get any money. And I had to get very creative on how I was going to sell because, of course, like most network marketing, you go to your family and friends, and that runs out pretty fast. So then you've got to go find new customers. So I would set up my little salons at fitness clubs and different places throughout Honolulu, and I would continue to sell. And I'd also learn how to sell and what worked and what didn't work. But it was probably one of the best business trainings I could have had early on.
And you had to teach other people how to sell in a role.
Exactly. Yep. You had to teach others. You had to learn about leadership. So network marketing for me was a great way for me to discover if I wanted to become an entrepreneur.
And so when I met her 30-something years ago, I said, man, she's got beauty, she's got brains, and she loves business.
I do love business.
And we've become business partners for 30 years now. I wouldn't be here without her today. And she and I developed the cash flow board game. For those of you who want to find out if you want to be a professional investor versus a passive investor, if you're tired of 401ks and IRAs and Roths and all that other stuff, that's what we developed the cash flow game for.
Yes, and so we developed the cash flow board game basically to teach people what it was Robert and I did to become financially free. Yes, so we recommend network marketing if you want to move into the B quadrant, and for those interested in becoming professional investors, check out the cash flow board game. So I actually have a business degree, a college degree in business, but I have to say, getting into network marketing, I learned more about what it takes to be an entrepreneur than I ever learned in my 4 years of college.
So again, I don't make any money off of network marketing. I had to learn how to sell. I was fortunate enough to get hired by the Xerox Corporation. I was the worst salesman they had, and 4 years later I was #1. But if you can't sell, you can't be an entrepreneur. You can't sell because you can't handle rejection. If you can't handle a rejection, you're no cojones, no huevos, finish. But most importantly, network marketing teaches you how to learn. And the best way to learn is by practice. Practice, practice, practice. When I worked at Xerox, if I didn't sell, I was fired. In network marketing, if you don't sell, they work with you. They keep building your confidence, building your self-esteem. And when that goes up, then your leadership skills go up, because you have to be a leader today. We have talked about network marketing here, teaching the skills here. Now we're going to talk to you about here. I do not like stocks, because stocks are manipulated. If you like stocks, that's fine. I don't disagree with that. But as you can see, most people who are investors today are over here, and they're giving their money to people who are real investors. I do not invest in mutual funds or ETFs or those things. The fees are too high. I cannot use debt, and the taxes in most cases are against me. So you have Alvaro and Carlos over here, and you have real investors here. We have Kenny. Come up here, please. I invest with Kenny because he's a better investor than me. But my wife, Kim, is really good, right?
Yes, Kim is very, very, very good.
Why don't you talk about, you talk to her, you don't talk to me.
Yeah. So Kim has always been the one that goes over the numbers and looks at the deals, always. So whenever I find a deal and I bring it to Robert, I actually call Kim.
Because I'm happier over here. Kim is happier here. That makes sense? So she's very good at it. And tonight she's working on the biggest deal of her life. And Kenny's already looked it over. And if she can pull it off, it's a great deal, huh?
Hundreds of millions.
So that's why it's really good. But Kenny started small. How much was your first real estate?
My first property was $110,000 US. I used my own money as a down payment.
And my first property was $18,000. Okay? But I took a 3-day real estate course. It was a very good real estate course about how to use no money to buy real estate. So I will show you the numbers really quickly. The property was a little condominium, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, $18,000 US. It was on the beach of Maui. The reason the price was so low is the market had crashed. Smart investors always wait for the crash. So this thing crashed. I had to look at 100 properties once I left the class, 3-day class. I had to look at 100 properties in 90 days and write a 1-page report on each of those properties. As my instructor said to me when I left that 3-day class, I was 26 years old. And the instructor says, your education begins when you leave the class, as your education will begin when you leave this class, not now. So you have a chance to talk to Carlos, you have a chance to talk to Alvaro. Talk to them, find out, learn. Doesn't cost you any money. Change your ideas. So with this here, the instructor said I had to buy the investment for 0 money. Okay? 0 money. Most people will tell you I can't invest because I don't have money. That's a loser. Please understand this. This was 1974. The dollar had just gone off the gold standard. Everything was coming up fast. So I had to figure out how to buy it for zero. And the reason I say that is most poor people, like Padre Pobre, always says, I can't afford it. I know some of you right now are saying, well, I can't afford it. I don't have time. I have children. I have a job. I have bills to pay. And it is those excuses that keep you poor. If you do not change that talk in your head, you'll always be the poor person. So there was about 32 in my class, 3 days long. I think only 3 people completed the exercise. We went and we looked at 100 properties, wrote a 1-page report. At the end of the 90 days and 100 properties, this was the best property. So I went back to the person, and it was in bankruptcy. It was right on the beach, just as pretty as this beach here. And he said I had to have $2,000 down. This is called equity. Again, it's the language of money. So I have equity. The bank was going to lend me $6,000 in debt. Right? That was the deal. Now I had the $2,000 in cash, but the name of the game or the exercise was, could I buy it for zero? So what I did was I paid for this property with a credit card. So now it was $100 debt. Okay. With that 100% debt, I made $25,000 a month. Boom. I was a free human being. I never needed money again. If you can make money with no money, that is called an infinite return, because I have no money in the deal. If I had put $2,000 in the deal and I made $25, what would my ROI be, Tom?
About 12%.
If I had used my money, my return would be approximately 12%. Easy. That's why I love real estate. But if I can buy it with debt, which is what Kenny does, then our returns are infinite. That is real financial intelligence. It is the way the rich get richer. We use debt. So ever since then, Kenny and I, we just use debt. Okay. So you want to explain that to them as best you can?
Sure. So I talked a little bit about it earlier. So when you put your money into a pension, then I knock on the door of the pension, and the pension gives me this and this. So that's how it works. Because they're trying to put your money to work. So that's why the deals are so important. Now this could also be a bank. I could go get the money from a bank. Because banks also will sometimes finance your equity in the form of debt. You know, it's just money. So you can call it whatever you want. But it can be 100% down payment in the form of debt. Another way is the insurance companies, like I mentioned. So how many of you put money into life insurance policies? Okay, great. So when you put money into life insurance policies, that money is expected to be there later. That's also invested here. It's also invested in the stock market. It's also invested in lots of different things. But pensions, insurance, money, deposits at banks, all of that is invested through people like me. So once you understand that it's your money being put to work, it doesn't really matter if it's in the form of debt or if it's in the form of equity. Because really, it's just the cost. What is the cost of the equity and what is the cost of debt? So right now in the US, I'm borrowing debt at about 4%. Here in Spain, I'm told it's a lot less. So if I can borrow at 1%, let's say here in Spain, and my inflation rate is 3 or 4%, then you're already making money. Because whatever you're buying is growing faster than the cost of your money.
It's a very dangerous game, so that's why study. Take classes. Have good mentors, good teachers.
So typically, equity is a little more expensive than debt. Typically. But not always. So it's all just money. You can get equity from people like Robert or people in the crowd here. Or you can get it from a bank, or you can get it from a pension fund, or you can get it from an insurance. It doesn't matter where it comes from. But typically, equity is a little more expensive, and debt's a little less. But right now, in Spain, I'm told that you can borrow very, very low. Now, you want to make sure that you're borrowing and buying the right assets that cash flow, of course. That's where the education comes. But if I was living here and I could borrow from the banks at these rates, I would borrow as much as I could for the right assets as fast as I could.
Again, tell them how many deals you look at, though.
So in the US, because the prices are so high, they were very low in 2008, 2009, 2010, and we bought a lot of properties. But now all those properties have doubled in value. So everything in the US, not everything, most cities have gone up a lot. So that's why we're buying less. But here, there's still lots of deals because the banks own lots of properties. So in 2008, 9, 10, and 11, I was buying millions of dollars of properties from the banks, just like BlackRock is doing here now.
BlackRock's a fund. They invest for people who don't know how to invest.
Right. Really, BlackRock manages people's money like yours, and then they're doing it anyway. That's all we're saying.
Again, tell them how many deals you look at, because what happens is people leave this room, they find the first deal, they buy it, and they lose money.
Yeah, you got to be careful. It's really not that hard to borrow money. You got to make sure that you're borrowing it on properties that are cash flowing. So like I say, we have lots of people that work for me now, and we look at big commercial, we look at 50 big commercial projects every month. So that's all we do all day long, is look at deals. We have way more money than we need, but it's better to find the best deal and be patient. But when the market crashes, you should be looking at as many as you can and trying to buy as much as you can. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. What do I say on that?
Well, so when I look at this, I look at a couple of things. One, it's good to have a return on investment. But I also see tax benefits here. Because the government wanted Robert to provide housing for people in Maui. So the government gave Robert tax breaks. So Robert might have gotten $25 a month in cash flow, but he probably got another $15 a month in tax benefits. So the tax benefits increased his rate of return. Now he was already infinite, but if even if he put this much down in equity, he just raised his rate of return because of the tax benefits, because it doesn't matter how much money you make. All that matters is how much money you keep. And if you're giving it to the government, you're not keeping it.
And if I had bought that house for me, I get nothing, right?
Right. So if Robert lived in the house, he wouldn't get the same tax benefits as if he bought it and put a renter in the house, because there's a difference between investment property and personal property. The tax laws are different here than they are over here.
So I just stay in a hotel and rent my property. Thank you. My hand, please.
So Robert bought a condo. And he is going to rent it to a tenant. When you rent property that you own in your own name to a tenant, could the tenant sue you if something went wrong on the property? See or no? See. Okay. If Robert holds title to the property in his individual name and he gets sued by a tenant, what can the tenant reach? The equity in the property, right? But what else? All of Robert's other assets, because the property is in his individual name. Now, what happens if we set up an entity, an SA or a limitada, to hold the property? Title to the property, when you go to the government authorities to see who owns this condo, and it says a company name, so title is in the name of the company. When that tenant sues, who do they bring the lawsuit against? Robert or the company? The company. And while they can get the equity in here, what can't they get? Robert's other assets. Okay? They can't get whatever Robert has over here. So we always, even at the start, even on your first deal, we want to use entities to protect your assets. So that's a feature we'll be talking about in the next 2 days.
How many entities do I have personally?
Lots. Robert has a lot of entities. He's well protected. But what happens is at the start, you say, I'm going to do my first deal. I'll take title in my name and I'll deal with the title later. This happens a lot all over the world. You have to take that step when you buy the property. You want to have that entity set up and take title in the entity name right at the start. Certainly you'll have insurance on the property. But do insurance companies have an economic incentive to not cover every claim? See or no? See? They make more money when they deny claims. So we want to make sure that title is in a company name so that the tenant can't get beyond the property and reach Robert's other assets.
So 1 minute, discuss what you've learned from all three of us. Okay, ready, go. Tomorrow, everybody will be playing the cash flow game. Okay? The reason this is important is this is called financial statements. People on E and S side do not need financial statements. People on the B and I side must have them. Must. And so 99.99% of all people who leave school do not know what this is. That's why people are so poor. Okay? That's why Obama is a poor man. Hillary is a poor woman. There are poor people who went to good schools. Then they run the government. Same as in your country and my country. This is what they do not teach. But the important thing to hear, and Tom will talk about it really quickly, is in this, there's 3 accounting statements. If you're going to be rich on B and the I side, you must know this. Tom, you want to talk about this real quickly?
Yeah. So, one of the great things about the cash flow game that you'll see tomorrow is it teaches you how to think like the B and the I side. Okay, how to think that way. See, if you're an individual, an employee, self-employed, you only need an income statement. You know what your income is that's coming in. That's what you report to the government on your tax return, right? And then hopefully you know what your expenses are. A lot of people don't, but hopefully you do. So that's your income statement. But what you have to have on the B and the I side of the cash flow quadrant, if you're a big business owner, investor, you must have a balance sheet, and you must have what this is called your statement of cash flow. Your statement of cash flow tells you where your money's coming from and where it's going. It could be coming from debt. It could be coming from investors. It could be coming from selling a property. Those aren't necessarily income, but they are cash flow. So you have to know where your money's coming from and where it's going. On the B and the I side, you have to have all 3 of these financial statements and understand them and use them. Most people are employees or self-employed, and so they never learn balance sheet and statement of cash flow.
So when Kenny or I go into a bank, this is what we show them.
Right.
The reason people cannot borrow much money is because they don't have this. So cash flow is the only game in the world that teaches this. And you have a chance to get the game, teach yourselves, teach your family, teach your friends, teach your business, play it 1,000 times, and you will start thinking differently. But this is the most important report card you have. As my rich dad said, my banker has never asked me if I had good grades. Banker has never asked me what school I went to. Banker wants to see this. If I have this, that's strong. And Kenny and I can borrow as much money as we want. If you don't have this, all you get is a credit card and a home mortgage. That's the horrible part. Kenny, you want to say something?
So I was talking to some people yesterday about this exact thing here in Spain, and they say this all the time. They say, well, how can I buy more houses because the bank will only lend me so much money for so many houses? And that's true. I understand that. But what we're saying is that you want to be the bank. You need to think bigger, because when you buy a big project, the bank looks at the project to pay the mortgage. They don't necessarily look at you. They look at the cash flow from the project. So like a hotel like this and a convention center like this, you're not going to get on your personal financial statement. They're going to look at the revenues from this place to be able to pay back the loan. It's a big difference. So if you're buying a condo, yes, they look at your income. But if you're buying a convention center like this, they're looking at all the revenue from the restaurant, from the convention center, from the hotel, from all the drinks and all the booze that you're going to have tonight. Those are all revenue sources. That's what they look at to pay back the mortgage. So it's very different thinking. So if you don't have the statement of cash flow and don't understand where your assets and your liabilities are, it's very hard to get those kinds of loans. The best part about it all is that you don't even need your own money, as we already said. You just need a deal that works financially, and then you need to go find the money. And then that's infinite.
So when people say to us, well, you can't get those loans here in Spain, the main reason you can't get those loans is because you don't have one of these. I don't think Obama has one of these. That's why the United States hasn't had a budget in 8 years. Right, Tom? He doesn't know what this is. He is a poor man who went to Harvard. Hillary is a poor woman who went to a good school. Clinton is a redneck. Okay? That's why we're in trouble. They run our governments. They don't know what this is. Trump knows what this is. You may not like him, but he wants to get this back into shape. But if you want to borrow money like Trump and not pay taxes, you've got to have one of these. And that's why the cash flow game was created. And the reason when I talk to network marketing companies like Alvaro and Carlos, many people in network marketing make a lot of money here and they spend it, right? It's like many professional soccer players, they make a lot of money and they spend it, they're broke. The average professional athlete in America is bankrupt 5 years after retirement because they think like poor people. It's not how much money you make, it's about the money that goes out. The other reason most professional athletes go bankrupt is they buy big houses, nice cars, and they go bankrupt. That's very middle class. It goes like this, their pattern. So when a banker is looking at your financial statement, they'll say, oh, nice house, nice cars, pretty women, you know. Broke. But they made a lot of money. What the cash flow game teaches and what Rich Dad teaches, you got to get here. Do you have a paycheck?
No. Well, yesterday we had a great tour of your National Museum. It's beautiful, by the way. But I was standing up on the hill counting the cranes. That's how I could see how good a city, how prosperous a city is. Because those cranes are all funded by debt. People are building properties in your town right now. Those cranes are development. They're creating jobs. They're creating housing. Somebody's doing it here.
And Gaudi, that guy was a genius. Gaudi had
Cojones.
Cajones, huevos.
Yeah.
He is over budget. He is out of time, and he's making more money. We estimate they're collecting $65 million a month at that place, and he never worried about how to pay for it. That guy was smart. But he was building an asset. Very big difference, okay? So you can see the rich from the poor. It's not how much money you make. It's not if you're a soccer star or a banker or a real estate broker. What counts is this. And the average person has a retirement fund that's bankrupt, and they don't know it. In your country and my country. That's going to be the problem. And you're going to have people with no jobs, more. So that's why we come in and we teach. We thank you all, for learning and listening. But your education is going to begin when you leave here, not tonight. Some of you are saying, oh, that's all bullshit. Some of you say you can't do that here in Spain. No, and you can't if you don't have one of these. That's the difference, okay? Garrett, you want to say anything?
Yes, just real quick. On these financial statements, in the United States, these have to be accurate, right? You cannot lie on these financial statements. When you sign an application with the bank, you sign under penalty of perjury that you are providing accurate information. All right? So you're not going to submit a financial statement to the bank that isn't accurate, which is why you need your team to help you with this. You need your CPA helping you with this financial statement. because the penalties are pretty serious. During the last crisis, they found there were a lot of financial statements out there that weren't accurate. They were making lending decisions based on fraudulent statements, and that will not go unpunished again. So it's easy, just tell the truth.
Thank you.